Last time I was here, supposed to be coming in, this is what the glove factory looked like in the morning, which was rather glorious. So rather than doing this talk, I went for a walk with a dog and went sledging on the hills over there with my son, so it was a great day for me. So my name's Nathan from Mojo Solutions. We are a technology solutions business. We provide and develop mobile applications and integrate systems together in order to help organisations to best use technology. As part of that, we also help to define the way in which technology should be used. So a lot of my work, I'm a solutions architect by trade, is to help organisations to understand what technology they should be using, why they should be using it, and how that technology will really benefit them. And much of this talk is really in that frame. I thought, though, before I start talking, maybe we can all start talking by getting our grey matter working on a glorious Friday. I'd say bright sunshine, but it's a bit grey today, with a little bit of a quiz. It's not complicated, it's not difficult, but it really just helped because often we have many perceptions of technology that maybe aren't real or are real, and it would just help to bring us together in that way. So this isn't a complex quiz in any way whatsoever. All I need you to do is simply look at the question and shout out the answer. It's not difficult. I'm sure your voices will allow for that. So, getting straight in there, the nearest decade, when was the first VR headset invented? Any thoughts? 1980s you're talking about here? Kind of give me it with centuries in as well would be helpful. Yeah, 80s? 90s you said over there. Anyone else got any takers? 1960s? So the first VR headset was in 1838. So it's not new. To the nearest decade, when was the first computer invented? 1920s over there. 1940s. 1880s. Getting close, definitely close there. So 1946. And it looks something of. Sorry?
How about the Babbage?
Before, yes, yeah. So no, but computer in terms of we class as the modern day computer, yes. So to the nearest decade, when was the internet invented?
80s.
80s, yes. 1983. Little tricky one this. So to the nearest decade, when was the first digital robot invented? So not your little mechanical thing, but digital robot. Any ideas? 50s? 50 years ago? 2000? A lot earlier, 1954. So just put it in context, we were building digital things before some of the other things came along at the same time. Those of you who love a little bit of a game, so Angry Bird, how long did it take it to reach 50 million users? Any ideas?
A month.
1 month? A week? Not quite that fast, yeah. So 35 days. Yeah.
Who's Angry Bird?
Angry Birds game, go Google it and you'll find out, yeah, it's a very addictive game, very simple platform game that took the world by storm. So, the reason we start with that really is that there's a simple fact, which is technology isn't new. It's been around for a very long time. We've been using technology since the Stone Ages, since we started to use items to cut things and shape things. But when we think about modern technology, sometimes it feels that it's different and somehow is in a complete new world. But we've been evolving and using technologies since those times. But there is a fact. The fact is that we are in a new era. We're in a digital revolution right now. And that is changing the way that we do things. It's changing the way that we think about things in quite a dramatic sense. And depending on your age, depends on how you're going to perceive that. So if you're in your 40s or lower right now, your ability to adopt and understand that is a lot easier than people over their 40s. But strangely, if you're in your 60s and 70s upwards, your ability to adopt those technologies is slightly easier also, because you're out of the working environment. And it's the working environment that causes a lot of the confusion for people, because it's that space where things are kind of done to or felt in that way. But if we step back in time, we've been to this place before. The Industrial Revolution, when it started, was in itself a huge transformation. It was the place where we did and developed a mass load of change. The world changed overnight. And just like that, within this evolution, we need to make other changes too. And we need to go back through there and learn lessons from it. So in the Industrial Revolution, there was lots of challenges with health and safety, child labour, and all sorts of things. In the digital evolution, we have the same challenges. We have people using technology for the wrong purposes, so cyber attacks. We have issues with cyberbullying. We have problems with people being addicted to the technology. And we have the problem of things like the iPhone and other technologies where they're using very precious metals, which are equivalent to almost blood diamonds as they were in previous years. And we really need to think about those things and how we can use technology for good. With every good bit, there's always going to be a bad bit. Everything can always be manipulated. Everything can always have something done to it in a way that wasn't intended. But there's no doubt technology is transforming our lives. So this time last year, when you were all receiving a talk from someone that wasn't me, this is my son. This is him born 7 weeks early. And there's a whole load of high-tech attached to him here. You can see that. He's got a breathing defibrillator on. He's got a hat on his head. He's got some sensors on his arms. But he's wrapped in a plastic bag. He's literally just born at this point, and he's in a plastic bag. So technology doesn't have to be high-tech in that regard. But they use that to keep him warm, they help to keep the liquid on his body, and to help to move him through the process they need to do. And that's really important. And it really dawned on me, sat in the hospital with him, and you're sat there in the NICU unit, it's very quiet. So what you get to hear all the time is buzzing and monitors going off constantly. And then you start to observe what's going on. And although most of the people in the hospital still use pen and paper to do the things that they're doing, there's lots of machines going around, mobile x-ray machines, and all sorts of things. And you really get a sense of, wow, if we didn't have these technologies, they wouldn't know half the things. There's a little tiny little pressure sensor on his foot that is measuring everything about his body and everything they need to know. And I can read that and I can know what that means. And therefore I know that he's okay or not okay. And it's phenomenal that we're kind of in those spaces, but we kind of take it for granted. And I think last year when we had the significant viruses in the NHS, we saw it cripple to its knees. It was like, oh my God, we can't send the x-ray now to the other people because the systems won't talk to each other. And we've become incredibly reliant on things with a way that we didn't realize that we were. So it's really important when we think about technology and the way that it is impacting our lives, that it does the right things. I can tell you, he's doing very well, and he's mimicking his older brother very, very well in the things that he needs to do. So there's no problem with that. He had a very happy beginning to his life. But when we go into our homes, and here, we're in this room right now, there's technology doing all sorts of things for us. So I'm using a computer, it's connected to a projector, but I'm also using old tech without thinking about it. So I have too many cables here because the technology's advanced faster than the projector has, and I've now stuck a weight on top of the cables to make sure that it stops pulling it and losing the connection. And sometimes we have to still live in those worlds. But in here, there's some Wi-Fi connection spots in this building. If I walk over there, I still get a connection. The Wi-Fi doesn't drop. And we use those technologies to create meshes and understand how we can then connect with them. And in our homes, it's the same. Probably don't think about it, but you've got probably maybe a smart TV. That smart TV is connecting to the internet. It's monitoring everything that you're doing. It's doing all sorts of things and enabling us to do things we could never do before. If you've got an Alexa, you can now pretty much sit there on your sofa and say, oh, I've run out of sugar. And before you know it, a packet of sugar is going to arrive at your door. You know, the ability for us to kind of do those things in a very easy way is very much there. But technology kind of has to have a purpose and it has to have a need. So I don't know how many of you remember the really exciting dancing Coke cans of the late 80s, early 90s, but it didn't really have any purpose. Very clever piece of kit, and basically mechanical and would dance to music, and had an evolution into dancing flower pots. But that was it. It kind of ended. Didn't really, as a piece of technology, have much purpose beyond a bit of consumer rubbish for people to buy and kind of get them on eBay now for a fiver. We kind of have to really think about why technology exists. And technology exists only for two real reasons. And the first one might surprise you, but it is there to make our lives easier, and that is its purpose. The second is to sustain our lives, sustain the planet. And they're really the kind of two fundamentals when we look at technology that we should kind of understand. So is it doing something for the greater good, to preserve, to help and aid, or is it there to make something easier, simpler to do? Now, my version of easier, simpler might not be the same as your version of easier, simpler, or the next person. So sometimes the technology doesn't necessarily work in the way that we want. And some of that's because our perception of it is it's homogeneous. If I do it like this, why can't you do it like that? And that's the evolution that we've been on with tech. And really important, when we start to look at those technologies, you have to think about actually, how do I work? How do I want to live? My choice. So, I don't know, I have an iPhone. Some people have Samsungs. There's no difference in those phones. It's just about the choice of how you want to work and how you want to interact with things and what works for you and what makes sense. I don't play Angry Bird, but I know what it is. But at the same time, I don't want to play computer games. That's okay. But how do we interact with those pieces of technology, and what do I want from it? So do I want entertainment? Do I want process? Do I want to make my life easier? Do I want online banking? Whatever it might be, all those things are making things easier and simpler to do. And to put that simply, in the world that we live in now, the speed that we've seen those things has really come from equipping ourselves with tools. Most of you have probably got a smartphone, as I can see on tables. That smartphone is probably more powerful and has got more potential than your laptop at home. The ability for us to kind of compute and do things and do them in a way that is easier for us to do them on a smartphone has evolved faster than the ability for us to do that on a computer. And you've seen that with the likes of Microsoft with Windows 10 trying to catch up with the world. It's like, oh, there's this thing called Apple out there. Oh, maybe we have to do that. Oh, Apple again, oh, there's this thing called Microsoft out there, okay, maybe we have to talk to them as well. Now you can pretty much do what you want anywhere on anything. And the do-it-yourself kind of IT world that we live in, I can go and get a smartphone from the shop, I can go and buy a computer, and I can connect that into any network I need to and work from it in any way that I need to. It's kind of the current world that we live in, and that's a real shift for a lot of IT companies. It's a lot of shift for IT departments within organizations to get their heads around. When they're used to, well, I give you a computer, I give you a phone, I've locked it down, you can't possibly do anything else with it, and it's controlled. And we're in this uncontrolled space. But what that has driven is the fact that now an application, which used to be very clunky and difficult to work with, and don't know why it's got 17 buttons on it, and I don't know what half of it does or why I need to be in it, has helped us to streamline that. To think about it from a position of, how do I need to interact? Why do I need to interact? When do I need to interact? And make that simpler. And in some cases, just prettify things up a little bit to make it easier for our eyes to kind of see what's going on, and then do it in the right way. Put in context, so I have a computer, but actually my phone, I can run my entire organization from my phone. My landline at the office is virtualized. That comes to my phone for an app. Everything that I need is in the cloud. Every application that I need to work with, I can have on that phone if I need to. And that's all I really need. I don't really need this. The only reason I use this is because I'm used to sitting and typing, and I find it a bit difficult to type on a phone still. So it's an interaction bit. But at the same time, I would say, actually, this computer's got smaller than my previous computer, and I have a tablet. I don't need the tablet anymore. I can just use that. And so you start to kind of adjust and define how we want to work with those texts. The other side of that is automation. And there's a real simple bit of automation, which is in our businesses, it's about making things simpler. So how do I get that piece of data from there to there? How do I capture that information and do that in a really easy way? And in tech world, what we're seeing out there at the moment is the glorious term of artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's the thing that we all hear and we go, ooh, that's the scary thing. It's going to take our jobs. It's not that world. So if we take that in a really simple perspective, 10 years ago, if you wanted to automate something or integrate something, you needed to get a whole bunch of very clever people in a room and spend lots of money making that bit of data go over there, or that bit of data talk to that bit of data. In the cloud world that we live in now, we can do that with a few clicks and drags and drops. It doesn't need clever people to do that. So all the clever people are now in the machine learning AR world and looking to do some things with that and understanding how we can do that. And in that world, we suddenly have the capability to do some very clever things and very different things. So if we take a machine and we make it cognitive, i.e. we give it a bit of a brain and we get it to understand some rules, then it can learn. But then it can start to look at things way faster than we could ever possibly look. So if we have a book, there's one on the table there, and we needed to read that and ingest that information, well, it's all really down to how fast we could process that information individually. Now, if we all took one page each and digested that, we could get through that pretty fast. I think we'd have an understanding. But now, if we needed to make a decision, so if we asked a question, well, every one of you's got one bit of information. How the hell do we make a decision on that? And we need to have a conversation. Suddenly, we've got a lot of complexity to try and come up with an answer. Well, a machine can do the same. It can say, well, okay, I need to compute all of this, so I'm going to use lots and lots of machines to do that, but the difference is it can talk and understand a lot faster. So suddenly we can replicate all of you, like you're the whole of the UK, in order to take on that exercise. And that's really where machine learning comes into its fore. The ability for it to compute and manage things at a much greater pace, but also for it then to undertake and do tasks. So how many of us sat, so yesterday I spent half a day doing the billing bit of our business, filling in some expense sheets, checking some stuff. It's like, why am I doing this? I don't need to be doing this. A machine could do this for me. And so much of that is where machines are replacing. So where we have admin tasks, and I hate to say if you're in HR, payroll, finance, law, you're pretty much going to be out of the standard jobs that you're used to doing in the not too distant future. Because the machines are replacing those things. But we have been in those worlds before. Machines have replaced things. But it doesn't mean those jobs disappear. It means that we then do other things. Because if a machine can input data faster, why do we need to sit there doing it? Well, someone needs to still check that data. We still need to then find out if that's correct or not. There's always going to be exceptions, and we need to help the machines to learn, and that takes time. So there's always a role for someone within the process. But automating those things and making that more efficient ultimately allows us to get data to where we want it to be. And when we've got data to where we want it to be, we suddenly have the ability then to really build that out into intelligence. So the world of big data suddenly arrives at our door. And big data isn't about suddenly going, oh, I've got lots and lots of data, can I just ask a magic question of it and somehow get an answer out of it? It is, however, a lot better than asking a magic 8-ball, what is the question, and getting an answer back. And it should help us to understand some fundamentals. And we can take all of our internal data and we can attach that to the internet. Everything that we do digitally is some way on the internet. So unless you make yourself particularly massively private on all of your social media, it's all there to be scraped. It's all there to be understood. So suddenly we have the power through big data to understand what's going on. So if I want to know whether my organization is going to be here in 5 years' time, well, what are the parameters that I might want to consider in order to ask that question? And then I can look at what's going on. I can look at trends. I can spot information around what's going on in the globe. I can even identify missed opportunities. I'll give you a great example of this. So I was doing some work with a local charity not far from here, and one of the big questions they have was a question of, we talk to so many people, we engage with so many people, but we don't know who they are or why they come to us. The first question is, well, do you have any information already in your organization that can be used? Second question is, well, where are these people? So are they geographically located around you? And what is the kind of questions you're trying to ask of it? And as soon as you get to that point, it all comes back to then relationships between that data sets and giving them a sense of, well, here is the understanding, here is the data. And without doing anything particularly complex, we've been able to join some of that data together being able to then plug in external data sets to understand, are they meeting their charitable need? Are they gaining the insight that they want? And are they providing the services that they should be providing? And ultimately, is there a missed opportunity for them as an organisation? So they're basics, into some slightly more interesting things. So with tech, at the moment, we all have to interact with it. So you've got a computer here, you've got a phone, you kind of have to see the technology to do something. And some of the technology that's coming through at the moment is very much in the mixed reality space, so augmented reality or virtual reality. And we can do some wonderful things with that. Your phone has the ability for any application developer to kind of build things on there and bring that to life. So whether it's history, so this was a prototype we did for someone in Bristol where we were showing kind of what we could do, simply to show that actually walking up to the Bristol Suspension Bridge and I shove a phone over it, actually we can bring to life what's going on. Even to the point where we can start playing around with some of these pictures. I mean, these are just stills, but actually we can start making them move. But I can interact with the bridge, I can see how it was built, how it was developed. In addition to that, we can create games. So my son loves Lego, and there's a cartoon Lego program called Ninjago, and there's a brilliant virtual reality app which allows us to get a dragon. So we have a dragon, and you can fly the dragon around the house, and his favourite thing is making the dragon breathe fire on his baby son or on the dog. But he loves doing it, and it's the wonderful thing of interacting with that. And the first time he saw that, he was, right, well, where is it? So he walked round the phone and was looking, it's like, it's not there. So then I had to take, and you can take photographs, so there's kind of take a photograph of him with it in order to show that actually this is not part of reality. But now it's kind of there, and it's there for learning. So now we use those sorts of games for him to understand things. So we show him, we can identify leaves, we can identify vegetables, we can talk about things in a different way. But we use mixed reality to kind of show in that area. Bringing that forward, soon it won't be too long before actually you can start to have a telephone call with someone via video, and actually we can just use the phone to project them into the room. So I just don't need to be here, actually. You could just all sit looking through screens, and I'll look like I'm stood here and you're having a conversation with me. And so that kind of holographic way of working is not too far from the norm. The other one, and the most practical one, which you can do, and it's quite nice, you can have a go at it, is you can basically, we can colour this room if we wanted. So we can use augmented reality to simply show on the walls what would it look like if we made it pink. And I can show what that would look like. Same we can do with clothes. So what would I look like if I was wearing a suit? And I can basically project myself into that. Those sorts of things are quite common, and there's lots of work going on. So for example, IKEA have got one recently where I can now go and look at a sofa in IKEA, or a table or a lamp, and go, what would that look like in my house? I wonder. And I can now grab it and I can place it where I'd like in my room. And I can build a virtual sofa environment and look at and furnish all of IKEA furniture in my house. How would that be? And that ability to understand things. So take that in a really practical sense. I bought a sofa many moons ago, and the first question was, can I get it through the door? I have no idea. So how can I then take this thing and take it home and understand, and that classic example for anyone who's watched Friends, where Ross is trying to get that sofa up the stairs, and actually understand, can we do that? How will this look, and what would it mean? And then that question of visualizing something, so getting a table and then visualizing what would that look like, but what would it look like with people sat around it? Would there be enough space to get around it? So measuring and visualizing is one thing, but actually putting it into place and understanding how will that be is really key. For architects, the simple example is, well, what would that look like when it's finished? Actually, we can project this whole building over there if we wanted and show what that landscape would look like. So rather than just having standard two-dimensional items, we can actually bring them to life into the real world. And you can do that on a table, so we can make two-dimensional drawings come to life, or you can do that outside and in full-size scale. Mixed reality has a huge potential in both the consumer world and in the future. As technology becomes more invisible, however, then we come into the world of the Internet of Things. And this is really about devices and things that we don't really interact with, but they're just here. So sensors, switches. And they're there really to capture information, understand movement. So the really basic, simple one of them would be a PIR, which there must be one somewhere in here, in that corner, which is a really simple sensor, which is used as a burglar alarm. It's movement tracks. But that sensor, by default, also captures temperature, also captures potentially footfall. It can also capture light, so it can know what we should be doing. Now, if we make that intelligent by plugging it into something, we can then take that piece of data and say, right, so if there's people in here, then great, how many people are in here? So do I need the heating on or heating off? Are they moving, not moving? Is it dark? Should I turn the lights on? I can start to understand how we need to work with those. In a business world, really simple thing for this. So if you go in any high street shop, so if you went in Jolly's, possibly now, I'm not quite sure, now it's been taken over, but if you walked in there before, they use simple beacon technologies which allow us then basically to track footfall. So we know what you're doing in the shop, so how many people are in the shop, where you're going. So we can track you. We track you by your device without you knowing. We don't know you, but we know your device because it's constantly pinging off a reception, so we can capture that number. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean it's Nathan, it's just this thing is going around. Where did it go in the shop? So all you're seeing is a blob, a bit like if you see football programs, sometimes they show you blobs of people moving around pitches in the virtual way. It's that kind of thing. So actually I walked in, I ignored all the things that they wanted me to look at, and I walked straight to this other bit, and then I didn't really see it when I went to ask someone. So they can start to track what's happening in their shops. How many people come through the door? How many people leave? How long do you stay for? And that's how they can kind of measure that. Same time, they use other sensors behind things to actually understand what you're doing and tracking your eye movements and other things to understand actually, or even looking at the thing that we want you to look at. That's big business for marketing agencies. But it's relatively simple technologies. We can also build on that technology to do other things, so we can make that safe. So really simple example of that. For no more than, I think it cost us £800, we built a smart home. And I say smart in inverted commas because when the chief exec for this charity went to have a look at it, she went, it's not very exciting, is it? It's just a black box in the corner with some switches. I was like, well, what are you expecting? It's not visual, this is all invisible. And basically this was for a charity who support people with, they rehabilitate people with brain injuries. And the challenge was a really simple question of when they're rehabilitated to a certain point, we need to know they're safe going home. And they have these bungalows attached to their buildings, which are independent living units. What they don't know is when they close the door on that person, they just stand there. And when they open the door, they just happen to be stood there. Well, do they actually do anything whilst they're not there? The second question was, are they safe? So are they sleeping? Are they wandering? Are they eating? Are they drinking? But what they didn't want to do was put lots of technologies in there, which you can do, to completely make that environment so safe that someone couldn't burn themselves. So we can turn off the cooker, we can turn off the lights, we can stop them kind of causing an injury to themselves, so they try and scold themselves. So it's kind of, we're looking for monitors around things. So in a really simple set of switches and monitoring, we're able then to turn around and say, actually, every day we send a simple report back to the psychologist that basically says, this person did this yesterday. So they slept well, they got up in the night and they went to the toilet, they've had a shower, they've eaten. We know they've had a drink. We only know those things because they're opening and closing things. So really simple things. We know that you probably had a cup of tea because you turned the kettle on, the tap ran, and the fridge opened. And it's like just a really simple sequence. What we don't know is if you consumed it. The only way we would know that is by putting other visual sensors into the room or putting biomarkers into someone, which is a little bit on the freaky side at the moment for people to get their heads around. So it allows us just to monitor that. Straight away, they're able to know that these people are okay and safe. Another really simple example of that was someone in one of the units who couldn't leave for 17 weeks because they needed to be monitored in fear of epilepsy. And so the way that they monitor that is by going into the room and checking, are they okay? Every time they do that, making them stressed, they're getting very anxious, they're feeling like kind of, why keep monitoring me, this is crazy. And so they're not ever getting through the rehabilitation process. By simply putting some monitors into that room, we're able to identify that, and that person left 1 week later. It's not complex at all. So these things are out there, and we can do lots and lots with them. We have a smart heater system in our office, which made me chuckle because they said, would you like me to turn the heating on as you arrive towards the office? And I thought, well, that's clever, isn't it? Maybe I'll do that on this app. So I was thinking, and then I realised, well, actually, so the office is in Bradford and Avon, and I live in Hull. I was like, well, I pass the office quite often. And I was like, I don't want this thing to just turn on and find that the heating's come on a Saturday afternoon because I was driving towards Bradford and Avon. So Internet of Things is very clever. At the same time, make sure it's got the right purpose. I kind of leave a couple of things out to end with. The first is really around machines. So robots aren't this anymore. Robots are something very different. But machines are coming, and they're very, very clever at what they can do. But it's taking time. And I was at a talk a while ago at one of the universities, and there was a fantastic demonstration. So this is like £25 million of European money, so it's good we got it from Europe, not English. So, you know, we'll use that money well before Brexit, to understand whether or not a robot could dress someone. Now, put that into context. So, I know when I put I do this with my son all the time, so I'm going to put a coat on him. I know there's so far I could bend his arm back before, it might break it. That sort of scenario, yeah? So how do I know what's the difference between something snagged and something being twisted or snapped? So all this money was based on the fact, all they're trying to do for 3.5 years is get a robot to put on a shirt. That's all it's done. And they had thousands of videos of computations to make a robot intelligent enough to understand the difference between a snag and a break. So when we talk about kind of artificial intelligence, when we talk about kind of robotics, it's going to take quite some time. Now there's some fantastic kind of James Bond-esque Q-type worlds out there, and up at UWE they've got a fantastic lab where it looks just like Q's invented lots of weird things, where they're testing these things. But they're not in a point you could put them in your own home. I mean, they're massive framed items, and they're kind of quite large and colossal, and they need to understand what they're doing. At the same time, at a university up north, they've done some fantastic things thinking about actually how will we put a robot into the real world, because these robots, most of them what they're using are industrial-based robots, the sort of things you see on TV when you see cars being manufactured. They're kind of large and big, and if one of them hit you, it would blooming hurt, to say the least. So they've built exoskeletons made out of rubber. This one was made out of old inner tubes from bicycles. And they use pressure systems, so pneumatics, to make it hard. So when it needs to do something, it beefs up and it can work. And then when it doesn't need to work, it's just a load of rubber. Now, as a gimmick at that university that was up in Manchester, they actually got the thing to play Phil Collins, The Air Tonight on drums, and made it into the shape of a monkey. So, you know, that's there on YouTube. It's a great video to watch in order to get it to work. And it's basically, and it's a very simple concept. Take that to the next level, that robotics, actually people who have limb impairments, actually we can take those robotics and actually add them as an exoskeleton. So imagine I can't move my leg. I need to be able to move my leg. Actually that exoskeleton attached to me, some simple tubing, boom, actually my leg can now start moving without any interference at all. Can't grip properly. Actually the exoskeleton can grip and move for me without having to do anything, because all it's doing is forcing the muscles to move without creating the resistance, which is all the mechanical ones do at the moment. Really simple examples of how we could use those sorts of things. Robotics that are out there, and some fantastic examples, are now within disaster zones when they happen. They have robotics that can go in there. So when we had the nuclear disaster over in Japan, that can actually go in where humans can't. It's a risk for us to go in there and might end life. So they can send robots in. We've been doing it for years. You see always on the TV with the bomb experts, and they send in the weird robot into the area with a camera on it. It's kind of, we have these abilities to these things now, and they are kind of working with us. The invisible bit of those robots is your chatbot. So your Alexa, your Siri, your Cortana, your Google Assistant. They're there to help, to support us. Has anyone tried Google Assistant? Yeah? Have you tried to, has anyone got an Android phone and give it a kind of, and talk to it? It's phenomenal what it can do. Siri can now do many, many, many things. And the aim is really to make life easier for us. So those assistants, so the example they gave with Google Assistant was, I need to get a haircut. And it's like, it goes and phones your hairdressers, has the conversation to book it. That's really simple, isn't it? You think what you do. Hi, yeah, you got space on Friday? No, okay. You got space on Thursday? Yeah, okay. Is my diary free? Yeah, okay, great. Haircut booked. It's not complex to kind of have that interaction, but it can talk, and it can do that in an all right way. If you phoned our office, you'll get a little AI bot that will talk to you in some weird voice, telling you that you've reached our offices. It's all AI. I just sat there and typed it into a computer. It then does that, and then it then directs you according to what you want to do. Soon you'll be able to talk to it and ask kind of who you want to talk to or what is your problem, and then actually it'll compute what we want to do with that and then send you to the right person right away, rather than at the moment it pretty much just sends it to Georgie because we haven't really programmed it properly to do anything right now. But that's the aim and what we can do with it. And that's really simple. That's plug and play type technologies. If you've got an Alexa, the best thing you can actually do, if you've got two devices, turn them both on, talk to one, then turn the other one on, and they have a conversation. And it's fantastic to watch. You can do it with Alexas, it's good fun. But we can do all sorts of things with them. So really simple things. So old school baby monitors that you'd have in your house. Don't need them. Those devices are designed to do that. They're designed to pick up noise, designed to work with it. We don't have baby monitors in the house. We literally have an old iPhone sat in the corner in my son's room, and then there's an app, and I can just connect to it. And I can hear him what's going on. I can talk to him, and I can see what's happening as well if I need to. And it's really simple bits of technology in order to do that. So chatbots and those bits are very much there. So the bit that we can do really well is do all of that in our own homes. The bit we can't do very well is do that outside. And we're in Wiltshire, and Wiltshire is pretty poor in connectivity at points, and that's quite hard. But down the road in Bristol, we have one of the leading smart cities in the globe in relation to kind of some of the things that we're looking to do. And that ability to connect things. So if you're someone who is vulnerable and you're at home and we put all of these safeguards in around that person, as soon as they walk out the door, they're almost meaningless unless we've strapped a phone to them in order to tag where they're going, or they've got some special bracelet on that we're able then to be able to track that. The ability to then kind of actually look at that and monitor that. So how many of us have ever left work and think, God damn it, if I just left 5 minutes earlier, I'd be stuck in this stupid traffic jam, or why do I need to leave anyway? I could just wait. Or how many of us now actually, if you're going by train, check if the train is on time before you actually leave the office or move to wherever you're going? Well, smart technologies allow us to kind of check that and make sure that that's right. And you've got a really simple example of that already at the moment, how they track a train and know where the train is and how long it's taken and whether it's catching up or not is a really simple piece of that technology. Or if you go on the train line, there's a really lovely bit on there that it knows you're on the train, it can geolocate you, and off the back of that, if you're on that train, is it busy? Is there any seats? You know, and simple things like that then feeds to other people to tell them they're going carriage A, it's really busy, carriage C is good. But that smart technology and building that into cities is it's been around for a while. The real simple bits have been able to make technology integrate in and allow services to run. So in Santander in Spain, they did a great example of that with bins, where basically the bin's smart, so therefore it tells you what's going on, and they only go and empty it when it's full. We have those in Bath with the little trash can compactor things. They're designed to basically send a little beacon, I'm full, come and empty me. That's the most simplest piece of technology you could think of. Then rather than having someone send someone around constantly looking in a bin, why can't the bin tell us it's full? And they're kind of there for that. Taking that to the next level, sort of building here, why can't we know everyone that's in that building? When there's an evacuation because of an emergency, why can't we use those technologies to be able to exit that building? Why can't I use that piece of technology to allow me to get in and out of the building? Really simple connected opportunities for us. So where's it going? Well, the reality is we have something right on our doorstep, which is a smartwatch, and we have our cousins over in America doing some very clever things. So if you were in one of the more advanced American states, you can have, in essence, a digital health passport straight onto your device. So your medical information is your medical information. Technically in that country it's the same. The NHS actually hold that data on your behalf in this country. But why can't we make that enabled? Why can't we enable that in a way that allows someone to understand what I'm doing, but also feed that? So we're seeing the dawn of that. So very recently there were some things where a health insurance provider said basically, unless you wear a smartwatch all the time and give us the data, we won't insure you, but also we're going to fluctuate your premiums unless you move. So are you doing your 10,000 steps a day? Can we see you're actually active? And we've been doing this for years in cars. So cars, you know, little black box for people, young drivers and other things where kind of actually, are you driving appropriately? Well, actually we know that. And then the same bit would be, well, okay, so we could then start to understand what's happening from a health point of view. So there's some great bits at the moment where basically we know you've got a cold before you've even got a cold. By putting on a simple device, we can actually monitor everything that's going on and actually can start to inform someone. So often, colds is a great example. So we see the manifestation of a cold at the point that we get a runny nose and we kind of feel terrible. But the cold bit actually happened 5 days earlier than that. And you actually contracted it probably 4 days earlier than that. So actually we can start to understand those things and actually tell you you're going to be ill in a week unless you change. And actually we start to enable that. Within the NHS, that's a massive opportunity. The amount of people that are kind of coming in, so through the winters, months particularly, where we end up in these epidemics. I know, for example, so my family's ill at the moment. What I've caught is because my son went back to school and it's like germ ball place and everyone gets then ill and then they just pass it around. And so you're in that space of we're not immune to it. Everyone then gets ill and then everyone's got that one. Okay, great, the next bug, the next bug. The ability for us to understand that and work with that is kind of really important. But also, just really simple things. So think about kind of stress ability, understanding actually how anxiety could work. For people, is there a point where actually, do you know what, I really should take a break or I really need to eat? So I suffer from hangryism, so if I don't eat at certain points, I definitely notice that I'm getting angrier and I need to kind of make sure that I fuel myself if my blood sugar drops too far. So just being able to monitor that, that's not complex, and that would have a huge bearing on how I work and how I live. So I'll leave it at that. There's a lot we could do, and appreciate a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm really kind of open to questions. Thank you.